What's up, everybody? Gajewski here. Back again talking college football. We are in the middle of August. Week 0 is upon us. Soon, very soon, everyone. Today, we are going to continue breaking down some teams. We'll be in the American today, talking Tulsa, Florida Atlantic, a few others, talking win totals, game lines, roster predictions, everything you need to know about these teams. But before we get started, if you like this content, please consider subscribing to the channel, leaving a like on the video. Those two things help us immensely as we are a very small channel. And if you have any comments, whether it's feedback, a request, even just an emoji, that helps a lot too. So thank you if you have done any of that. During the video, we will reference win totals as well as totals during the regular season, sides. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. And last thing, we do have a summer guide available for those of you interested. You will get projections for every single game, which leads you to win totals, but you can break that down within the season. Look at week 7 for whatever reason if you want to. It is every single game. We also do player projections for those of you interested in fantasy or best ball, as well as everything you hear here goes to the Discord first. That is depth charts, analysis. So check that out. The link is below for those of you interested. All right, we have the American today. It's an American special. And we're going to talk about a few teams near the top, at least a couple I'm excited about this season. So let's pull up the back end and get right into this. We're going to start with Florida Atlantic. And if you have questions, leave them in the chat, comments, what you think is going to happen with these teams, Florida Atlantic, or whatever else, let me know. All right. Florida Atlantic haven't made a bowl since COVID-19, and technically that wasn't even a full season. You have to go all the way back to Lane Kiffin to find the last time this team was having sustained success. You had Willie Taggart, you had Tom Herman, both of them failed epically. The question is Zach Kittley the guy? This video is going to talk about Kittley, his staff, the overall roster, and health of the program, then get into what to expect for this upcoming season. And that starts with recruiting and the overall health of the program. So let's pull you behind the glass. Here's where Florida Atlantic ranks over the last 3 seasons. They're actually one of the better recruiters in the conference, and that makes sense. Generally, the Florida teams, as well as the Texas teams, do kind of have a leg up in some of these G6 conferences. They had a coaching change, so FAU did decide to go a little bit more portal recently, especially under Kittley. It has hurt their recruiting rankings, but in general, it's not something I'm worried about. They kind of have at least the ability to choose between recruiting and transfer portal how they want to use this. So when you look at just overall talent acquisition, that does factor in portal as well. This team is 7th over the last 3 years. Retention's been pretty good for them as well. They just need to invest a few more resources into the program, and that could just be time on task for Kittley. He's a second-year coach. It does take some time for these things to build. So started off 4-8 last year. A couple good wins. They beat Tulsa and UAB. There wasn't really anything in their losses that suggested they should have picked up an extra game or something like that. But overall, I'm still optimistic with Kittley. He comes from really the best offensive pedigree you possibly can. Formerly of Western Kentucky, then with Texas Tech. It's an air raid offense, which works a lot in some of these G6 conferences, certainly the American. They were 85th last year, and this was an offense that was passing 63% of the time and one of the fastest offenses in the country. 21.4 seconds per play is absolute hyperspeed. Kittley is the OC here as well as the head coach, so a lot on his plate for a first-time head coach. Let's hope year 2 he's a little more accustomed to the job. Brett Dewhurst is their DC. They were 116th last year. They need to improve. There's not really anything to say about this. He's shy on experience, but another promising coaching candidate coming up. You'd wish there was a little bit, maybe more experience in the coaching staff, but I like going the route, let's get the up-and-comers rather than, what they did previously with Tom Herman and Willie Taggart. We don't need some of these older, experienced, but previous failure head coaches. So tentatively excited for the staff and the health of the program. Let's go to the depth chart. Our depth charts give you a look at each position group, what experience a player has, and most importantly, a value score. That's a 0 to 100 scale, 100 like your all conference players, 50 is average. And we'll do this for each position. Starting with quarterback, Caden Veldkamp is back. Long history with Kitley. Veldkamp was previously at Western Kentucky. He's a big pocket passer, 6'5", 245, 67.5% completion percentage, 7.1 yards per attempt. The big problem with him was negative plays, and it largely came with his arm. He had 23 big-time throws and 24 turnover-worthy plays. For a guy that's not mobile, he actually didn't take too many sacks, 22, but with the amount they passed, that actually ended up being an above-average 15% pressure-to-sack ratio. So really, you're looking at a fairly productive signal caller, especially for this type of offense, that's really only held back by these negative plays. So I'm a little bit optimistic with Veldkamp. I think in another year with FAU, you could see him improve, and certainly they are banking on him. And even when you look at some of the interceptions, a lot of these came in high-profile situations. For example, he had 4 of his turnover-worthy plays against Florida International for some reason, but 5 against Maryland, another 3 against Tulane. That kind of makes sense. But when you look at some of the other games, he actually did a pretty good job holding on to the ball within conference, like Memphis, no turnover-worthy plays. South Florida, no turnover-worthy plays. There should be some optimism, at least for Veldkamp. Overall, we have this as the #1 QB room in the country. Depth is pretty good here as well. There is some attrition at wide receiver. Now, Jay-Sean Platt went to Illinois. Asad Wasim went to Purdue, but they did get back Easton Messer, another Western Kentucky transfer. He caught 105 passes last year. Some of that is the offensive system. He's working out of the slot. He gets the underneath targets. 558 did come after the catch, but he was still above 2 yards per route, which is absolutely elite. And I like what they did bringing in transfers from P4 schools. They already did that a little bit last year with Dominique Henry. He was previously with BYU. And when we saw him, it was at least productive enough, 40 catches. He played on the perimeter, 1.25 yards per route's not great, but you're talking about a steady player, not someone that's really a game breaker or anything, but he at least is a returning starter that you can rely on. Your last starter is probably going to be a competition between Kelby Valson from Texas Tech. Clearly, the continuity with Kitley there is something they wanted. But RJ Garcia from Bowling Green projects a little bit better for us, and it's for a few reasons. First of all, he's from Kansas State. He spent his first 3 years there and played a bit. And then with Bowling Green, we saw him emerge and play a lot more in kind of an ineffectual offense that was on their third-string quarterback for most of the year. So his yards per route at 1.26 leaves a little bit to be desired, but you can rationalize some of that away. There's also like Tucker Holloway, a depth transfer from Virginia Tech. Braden Hoach is back. Maryland transfer Jamari Powell-Watson is back. There are a couple deeper candidates that should make you feel decent about the depth of this receiver room. We currently have it ranked 4th in the American, and I think there's a bit of upside for this to finish higher if the overall health of the passing game improves. Tight end, it's not the most important position for this team. They use a lot of 4 wide. It's kind of just the offense. Think back to some Western Kentucky teams of old, even Texas Tech when Kitley was there. So with the amount they use 4 wide, don't be super surprised to see this as like a 60% position, something like that. They have a lot of low-level transfers coming in, so I think they're just playing the money ball game. A.J. Johnson came over from Villanova. He's played over 1,000 snaps, but really bad blocker, kind of just your receiver out there, 6'4", 255. So he's a bigger body, and maybe there's some optimism he can play a little better. Just haven't really seen it yet. Coastal Carolina, Brooks Johnson played 307 snaps. Again, not a very good blocker. He's 235, so profiles more as a receiver. And then even like Marcus Vinson, he missed all last year with injury. So we have to go back to his time with UTEP to really see him. Another really bad blocker. So I think you're probably going to see a lot of receiving tight end action when it's on the field. If it's on the field, that remains to be seen. But it's one of the worst tight end rooms in the conference. They're clearly just not really focusing on this as a position group. Offensive line, they were pretty good in pass blocking, 39th last year, and that's what they were doing majority of the time. Run blocking was a disaster, and now they're losing 4 major contributors from this unit, but injury has allowed a few others to at least get snaps here and there. Jacavian Nonar is back at left tackle. He's a former Maryland transfer. He's huge, 6'8", 315. He's been pretty below average in the run game, but when you look at his 33 pressures and 2 sacks, it's kind of alarming, except they ran so many pass plays that he actually still came out above average when you break this down to a rate statistic. At right tackle, Georgia Tech transfer Ben Galloway is the most likely to play. He was a top 1,000 recruit back in his recruiting class, but you just don't have a lot of experience. He's clearly a guy looking for more playing time. There is some weird depth like Aiden Jones from VMI and Cortez Winslow from Lamar. I think they're more just looking for depth with those FCS players. Inside, center Vincent Villacable is back. He's played 967 snaps, and he's been speculated to maybe move to guard. He's a former Indiana transfer, so a guy coming from a pretty good background. I'll say this, he's going to play an interior position. I'm not 100% sure if it's guard or center. Having already played center, I think that's most logical, but we'll see. They clearly do like a couple other guys. Maybe Braden Cunningham is able to win that job and then they can move over to guard. We'll see. Cunningham hasn't played a lot, just 20 snaps in his career, so that remains to be seen. The other guard options, assuming Villacable does win that center job, would be Mauricio Hines. Last year, he started 3 games. He was pretty bad when he was out there. You have Carson Osmus, maybe. He's only played 3 snaps, but there's like Dubre, Roki. They're in the mix as well with decent numbers. So the offensive line is a little bit of a concern. I think you feel okay about Nonar, Villacable, and Galloway, but the rest kind of needs to be figured out here. This unit is ranked 11th in the American for us out of 14 teams. So certainly some work to be done if they reach their ceiling. And this was a little bit of an issue at times last year. The running game, you lose Jamari Sands to Florida State. Caden Shields Dutton is back. 5.5 yards per carry for him, 17 catches, no drops or fumbles. Pretty good efficiency as well. And he's 5'11", 215. Tentatively optimistic with Shields Dutton. Maybe they run the ball a little bit more. He really flashed in a small sample last year. There's not much behind him. Ethan Irvin, low-level transfers like Brady Tillman and Leonard Farrow, those players are from Edward Waters and Fairmont State. So another money ball position, it seems. But I don't really think it matters with what Shields Dutton flashed in short. I mean, in a little bit, only 302 snaps last year, but certainly the flashes should leave you optimistic that the running game can be a little better. They're also 11th in this conference in terms of raw ranking. But overall, it's an air raid offense. The pass blocking's been okay, and the best position groups are your quarterback and receiver. So clearly they focused on the most important things. Defense. Last year, Florida Atlantic was 105th in run D, 73rd in pass rush. They return Javinj Marcellin, probably their best edge rusher, and he had 38 pressures. That's pretty awesome. This guy was better in overall run defense. So maybe you're looking at a player that can take a step forward as a pass rusher. Excuse me, he had 38 tackles. I think I said pressures. He had 8 pressures, but it's kind of a solid foundational piece when you're a good run defender off the edge. You're 260 pounds. Now, if you could just get after the QB a little more, you could look at an elite player. There is a bit of experience here as well. Deshaun Baptiste played 390 snaps for this defense. He's formerly of Troy and Tulane. He's the opposite. He had 26 pressures, 7 missed tackles, really hurt his run defense numbers, but he's also 260 pounds. There should be optimism there. The transfers are pretty promising as well. Jay Crable comes from Ohio, 33 pressures, 6 sacks, did miss 14 tackles, so that needs to be noted. Jonathan Bax from TCU, he had 7 pressures, but the opposite of Crable, he stood out in run defense. So you kind of have these guys that have clear strengths either in pass rush or run defense, and you kind of hope that they can either piece it together or someone can put it all together. Depth here is good with Lumen and Roberts and some of these other players who have seen pretty significant time. Roberts at 316 snaps as a freshman, so wouldn't be surprised to see him. Inside, lose a couple players, Nawan Barber, Bryce Langston, but CJ Duggett Jr. is back. 277 pounds. He's played 658 snaps and was pretty good in run defense despite the small size. That also allowed him to move around a little bit. 16 pressures was solid. He's a former Cincinnati and Ohio transfer. Then you get Wilkie Denaud, who played on the edge last year. He was already a really big edge defender. We're talking about a guy who was 285, so I think it makes sense to kick him inside a bit more. 10 pressures and very good run defense, 30 tackles. I'm not really sure why he didn't play more. He's a former Auburn four-star and clearly one of the more talented players on the D-line. He certainly deserves more than the 306 snaps he got last year. And then you have Enos Sledge from Illinois and Auburn. He's never really lived up to his recruitment. Earl Miller Jr. played 101 snaps. He's a former FCS guy. Lumen's brother, Tycool Hill, is back. The depth is pretty good here. And then you have like some transfers. Corey Clark from Mississippi State, LeBron Edmond from UT Martin, Blake Burris from SMU that don't even really factor into the picture outside of injuries. Quietly, FAU's defensive line ranks 5th in this conference. Pretty optimistic with this group. Linebacker, you lose Tyler Stolsky to West Virginia, but Leon Hart Jr. is back, played 638 snaps, and he led the team with 96 tackles. And believe it or not, he still came in a little bit below average in run defense, largely due to missed tackles, but he got roasted in coverage. This is the biggest concern. 29 catches allowed was a 74%, 306 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 PBU. Hart was decent in run defense, could have been better with the missed tackles, but the coverage is what you're really worried about. Behind them, probably some combination of Nate Fisher from San Diego or Joseph Sipp Jr. from Kansas. Nate Fisher was 100th percentile in the FCS. I think he should absolutely get a look. He's 6'2", 230. And Joseph Sipp, we didn't really get a taste of him in the Power 4. He's a previous Bowling Green starter and played over 1,300 snaps there, where it really took him a while to even reach average play. The second he did, he transfers to Kansas and gets hurt after 18 snaps. A really hard evaluation. There is also Kamari Johnson. He's originally a JUCO transfer, and we saw him play quite a bit, 394 snaps. Run defense was the main problem. Missed 15 tackles. You got to clean that up. There's also like a Zaire Horton who played 288 snaps. He could be in the mix. This Florida Atlantic linebacker room ranks 11th, and that's with us projecting the split between Sipp and Fisher. There is a chance they're a lot better. Fisher probably needs to play more just based on the talent profile alone that Hart, Sipp, and Kamari Johnson really don't have, given where they've come from. The secondary was probably the biggest concern with Florida Atlantic last year. They finished 118th. Now they lose Chris Keys, Terrence Reed, Dylan Williams. I don't think that really makes it doesn't make a difference to me at least. Their top returner is Demarius McGee. And I think Demarius McGee is probably locked into one of these starting jobs. He's a former LSU four-star. He played 412 snaps. He was pretty good at run defense and, coverage allowed. 47% completion percentage for 60 yards, 1 touchdown, and 4 PBUs. He was far from the problem last year and honestly might have just been their best player. You also get Ohio State, LSU, and Oklahoma State transfer. Yes, he's been at all three. That's J.K. Johnson, the former four-star. Previously with Oklahoma State, at least most recently, he's actually played decent. Now, he's never lived up to the four-star recruiting pedigree, but he is 6 feet, 185, 772 snaps. The step down in competition to the G6 should help him, you'd think. This is a guy that's actually played significant snaps in the P4 at Ohio State and LSU. The nickel, I'm thinking Derek Rogers probably takes this. He's a returner, a former Purdue transfer. He's really good in run defense. In coverage, maybe needs a little bit of work, but 161 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 PBUs could be worse. And then when you get to safety, Jaden Sweeney returns after 515 snaps, really good run defender, formerly with Liberty. Coverage could use a little bit of work, but he's fine. Tyson Rooks is probably the counterpart. He's 6'4", 215. Never really got a chance to play a full-time role at Illinois, but every time he went out there, he never embarrassed himself. So depth pieces like Bo Simpson Neely from Western Carolina. You have some depth corners like Wallace Foster IV from LSU, Amar Reynolds from Illinois. There's a decent amount of depth here. It's just not very proven. So the secondary comes in 11th overall in the American. I'm actually optimistic on special teams too. They got a gift with Colin Rogers transferring out of SMU. He's 188 of 189 on extra points. And field goals, he sprays a little bit, but he is 9 of 17 from 50 plus, so he's clearly got the leg. Here's where Florida Atlantic ranks among all of these teams and their position groups. We have them power ranked 87th. Their win total is 5.5, juiced minus 160 to the over. Minus 160 is about an effective half win, so we're right in line with the win total. And positively, we have receiver, quarterback, and defensive line as the three most talented position groups for this team. That sets the foundation for the other positions to maybe come along in time. Biggest concern for me is still what pressure are they going to give up? The scheme masked that a little bit. And then on defense, do other teams just throw the ball over the top? Here's the schedule. Certainly not easy, but you do kind of have a 1-1 for sure record in non-con, with Florida being the loss and Texas Southern being a win. That's not a very good non-con team. From there, what do you do against Florida International and Louisiana Monroe will determine whether you're maybe a 3-1 or 2-2. Because once you get into conference play, it's certainly not easy for Florida Atlantic. They have a very tough game against Navy in week 2. Fortunately for them, that game's at home, and that's probably the best time to face this Navy team that has a lot of new faces. You get Army at the midpoint of the season, but you're off a bye, which is probably the second best time, maybe the best time to face a triple option team. So you're set up well against the two triple option teams in your conference, one off a bye, one in week 2. And you get Rice in week 8 right after Army. That's a different kind of option, but there's no way around this. The end of the season's tough. Back-to-back weeks, 4 straight weeks, you go North Texas, UTSA, Tulsa, South Florida, and then even your last game's a road trip to East Carolina. It's a brutal 5-week stretch to end the season for Florida Atlantic, which keeps us kind of away from this win total overall. I am interested in a couple spots throughout the year. Certainly Navy week 2 is going to be one on the radar for me specifically, and we'll see how they look after the Florida game. You're just hoping kind of in some of these spots, please don't get banged up and like lose your quarterback or something. And that does happen a lot for some of these teams that step up and play the FC or the P4 big dogs early in the season. All right. No one in the chat just yet, but see a couple of you watching. I want to thank you all for being here. It does mean a lot. Can't wait to do these during the regular season. Imagine it now. It's Thursday morning, the week of week 0, and we get to talk about actual games on the field. We're close. We're very close. You can feel it. All right, we're going to continue with Tulsa. I'm really optimistic with Tulsa, man. I think this is a sneaky team. So very curious to see what you all think watching the video before and live and after the fact. Tulsa, 2026. The last time Tulsa made a bowl was 2021. They haven't won more than 5 games in any season since then. Now we're entering year 2 under Trey Lamb. Can they finally make a bowl? This video is going to talk about the staff, the roster, and overall health of the program before giving a prediction before the upcoming season. So let's start with recruiting and look at how the team is overall factoring into the American. We currently have Tulsa around middle of the pack in recruiting rankings. They actually turned in the number 2 recruiting class back in 2024. Unfortunately, they had a coaching change right after that, and they've only been able to retain 44% of it. But still, that's not bad. And overall, this team has done a decent job in the portal as well. When you just look at overall talent acquisition, factoring in portal, factoring in recruiting, they're 6th in the American. This team has no business missing a bowl for 4 straight seasons. Now, retention's a little bit up and down with Tulsa, but it's still a team that's going to be dangerous with the right man in charge. So is that Trey Lamb? They went 4-8 in his first season, beating Oklahoma State, Oregon State, and Army. And they also had a post-game win expectancy above 50% against New Mexico State. Their analytical record was 5-7. That's not a bad start for a team that was kind of in the woods. So Lamb comes from the FCS, formerly of East Tennessee State and Gardner-Webb. A lot of coaches on his staff are from the FCS ranks because of this. He's also very involved in the offense. He's formerly an OC and QB's coach. And when we saw him call plays, Tulsa was honestly 109th in offense. So it wasn't great last year. But what we do know is the offense plays fast and it's fairly balanced. So the actual OC is Brad Robbins. Brad Robbins left. Wasn't there to call plays, of course. They also had Ryan Switzer leave. So the current OC is Kevin Barbay. And he's not had a great real run when he's been OC. We saw him at Mississippi State. We saw him at Houston. Last year, he was an analyst. So more kind of just an advisor role, it seems to me. Barbay's not someone I'm super optimistic on. Lamb's going to have to run this offense. Josh Reardon is back for year 2. Tulsa's defense was unbelievable last year, and Reardon's been with Lamb for a while. He comes from the FCS ranks, came up with him. So overall health of the program, it's a little better than you might think with recruiting and talent acquisition. Lamb is solid. Reardon is good on defense. I don't like Kevin Barbe, but he's not really in a pivotal role right now with this team. Let's look at the depth chart. The depth chart is going to go position by position. You can see how experienced a player is, the amount of snaps they've played. And then the most important thing to look at is the value score. That's a projection moving forward, trying to determine how good a player will play in the upcoming season. 100, that's your best number. 50 is average. So Baylor Hayes, redshirt sophomore, kind of a weird prospect. He's 6 feet, 185, completed 58% of his passes last year, 2,161 yards, 6.8 yards per attempt. It's more game manager territory for him. 17 big-time throws, 15 turnover-worthy plays. Didn't really run 190 yards on the ground, which was 2 yards per carry, but he didn't take sacks either, only 14 of them. So with Baylor Hayes, you hope that he can just improve incrementally because he didn't really do anything horrific for the team, but he never really flashed any big playability either. It's just kind of steady, slightly below average play from Baylor Hayes. They definitely upgraded backup, it seems, with Dexter Williams, formerly of Kennesaw State, Indiana. He's been all over the place. But with Baylor Hayes sort of showing us this tap ceiling, right now we have the quarterback room ranked 13th in the American, so second to last. And Baylor Hayes is like a 0-star recruit. There's not a lot of optimism you're going to get elite quarterback play from Tulsa this year. But do they need it? I'm not sure they do. Receiving room is probably a little better than last year. They lose Zion Steptoe to Minnesota and Zion Booker to Kennesaw State. But they went out and added a weird blend of talent, starting with Javon Ross from Bethune-Cookman, who's 5'8", slot receiver. He was 82nd percentile in the FCS. So some optimism there. That's very talented. It should translate over. You get David Wells from Oregon State, who profiles more as a perimeter receiver. He caught 45 balls, 472 yards. That's 1.4 yards per route for David Wells. Your maybe stud receiver you're looking at could be Jimmy Callaway. He's played a lot of places, formerly with Tennessee, Louisville, Tulane. Only 3 catches last year, but he is a very high recruit. Can he live up to that? I'm sort of hesitant. It's not his first time playing in the G5. In fact, he's been with Tulane in this conference where it failed epically as well. There's Oren Singleton, had a really weird season last year. Singleton's a small receiver, so he profiles more as like your backup slot. With West Virginia, he only had 4 catches, but that's because he got hurt and then he decided to leave the team after losing his job. With Eastern Michigan, he was at 1.6 yards per route, which is okay. He had 65 catches down there, so kind of a wild card as well. Other incumbents include Grayson Tempest, Micah Teese, the former Texas A&M 4-star who's never lived up to his recruitment. There's a weird blend of talent, a couple of 4-stars who have come down, a couple FCS-style players who have come up. And altogether, it's not really worked to this point, but the talent on paper is a little better than last year's. This unit currently ranks 8th in the American overall, should be a slight upgrade. Now, unfortunately, they lose their stud tight end, Brody Foley, to Louisville. He was probably their best offensive player last year. He was certainly their best pass catcher. So you're looking at Jewellen Roberts taking over after 178 snaps. Big thing with him, not the best receiver, but he can block. He's 255. He was basically on the field as a second blocker in some situations. The real wild card here is North Central transfer Grant McT, who comes from D3. He was awesome down there. He's 6'5". Now he's only 220. That's not good size. But what does a D3 transfer do coming up to the FBS? Yes, it's the G6, but it's still the FBS. This is a massive jump. There's also like a Chris Gasayan, who played 2 snaps last year. They're not deep at all. Right now, they rank 11th in this conference in overall tight end rankings. Just a big loss. It's going to be really hard to fill the shoes of Foley here. Offensive line, this unit is a bit up in the air. They were 95th in pass blocking, 87th in run blocking last year. They lose 3 graduates in Jaquan Adams, Simon Wilson, and Sean Hill. Left tackle is probably going to be Cam East. He has 616 snaps, former Ole Miss player, primarily a right tackle, but he has played left tackle in a pinch before. So it makes a little more sense to move him over there, in my opinion. Pretty good run blocker, 19 pressures allowed, 2 sacks. All that was just slightly above average for him, which is the grade we have moving forward. The other tackle position is up for grabs. Brady Duffel was really bad last year. Horrible run blocker, 16 pressures allowed, 4 sacks. He flat out needs to get better. 690 snaps in his career is kind of getting to the point where it's put up or shut up. You can't be playing this bad and still have starting jobs. So he's kind of in a make or break situation. Don't be surprised if he does not win this job. He's just been that bad through his career. And sometimes players have injuries you don't know about. There can be extenuating circumstances that explain away bad play, but there's no way around it. He's been bad. Inside, center should be Malachi Preciado. He is a South Alabama transfer, and we've seen him start quite a bit the last 2 seasons. He actually began his career with Purdue, but above average run blocker, 9 pressures allowed last year. All that is solid. He should be able to make the jump over here. We have multiple years starting with him as well. The guards, I think you're looking at Ian Mays. He was average on 402 snaps last year, and he played both guard positions, so you do get some versatility with Mays. And then Hunter Erb is a former Texas A&M 4-star. He started 5 games last year and was pretty average throughout them. Didn't allow any sacks, only 4 pressures. Those should be your top 3 options on the interior. However they want to configure that, I could see it changing a little bit. There's not much proven depth at tackle or guard, so they need to have these players on the field. They elected to really just stand on depth. They didn't go out and get many portal additions that aren't listed on the screen here. The offensive line rankings we have, they're 12th. Not ideal, but there is some pretty clear upside if they could figure out a couple positions here, the main one being that right tackle spot. Running back. Running backs like coming to Tulsa. Dominic Richardson was here last year. A.J. Allen was here last year. Both of them are now departed. But they get a couple other transfers that are high-profile guys. Damari Alston's here. Damari Alston has nearly 800 career yards with Auburn. 5 yards per carry with Auburn. 19 catches, yes, with Auburn. He's a 4-star. He should not be here, but he is. The main concerns, he did drop 3 of 24 targets, and he fumbled 3 times on 243 carries. He absolutely needs to cut both of those down. But the real answer is he's far too talented to be at Tulsa. They are lucky to have him. Run game could be dynamic with a guy like Alston behind the offensive line. And then you also get some interesting rotational pieces like DJ McKinney from New Mexico. He was productive. Efficiency hasn't been elite like Alston at times, but he's especially been a good receiving back. He can fill in for a pinch or even change a pace roll. Seth Davis has been pretty efficient coming over from Mississippi State. Only played 7 snaps the last 2 seasons, but we've seen him in action, 6.3 yards per carry in his career on 403 yards. He's just a bit smaller. You have Sevion Morrison back from injury. He's a former 4-star who's coming off a completely lost season. Nebraska and Kansas transfer, 5.7 yards per carry in his career. And there's a number of other players that are interesting too. Traquan Jones from Old Dominion, he averaged 7 yards per carry last year. Didn't play a ton, but flashed elite speed when he had the ball. Former JUCO guy. The running back room is second in this conference. It's so deep, we're talking about guys that aren't even listed on the screen right now. This should be a position of strength for Tulsa. And overall, I think that is how the offense will function for the most part. Help your running backs, help your quarterback, run the ball as much as you possibly can. That's your best position. Hopefully they can just piece together the offensive line. Defense. Now, Tulsa's defense was among the best in the conference last year. They should be right there again this year. They were 11th in run D, 35th in pass rush. They lose Jaden Burnett to Rutgers, but they have a couple guys coming back that do profile to fill his spot. And one of them is Hudson Ball, 6'3", 255. He played a lot. He's only a sophomore, 42 tackles. 9 pressures maybe isn't ideal, but even for just an incumbent, that you'll take the run defense to start and hope the pass rush comes along. And they might not even need him as a top 2 option. He's just their top returner. In the portal, they get Thomas Davis from App State. He originally began his career with Miami, so a very talented player. And he's excelled the last 2 years. Really good run defender, 28 pressures. Last year, he didn't play after week 8, so that's kind of why the snaps dropped to 220, just an injury situation. And then you have Kyron Duhan from Oklahoma State. He was actually one of the better players on this team, 265 pounds, and that really showed up in run defense. We saw him play a bit with UTEP the year prior, and it followed a similar pattern. Pretty good run defender. Pass rush could use a little bit of work. And from there, you're looking at depth pieces like Will Upshaw as the main depth pieces. They'll probably need to rely a bit more on their top 3. But inside, there's a lot of returning production in Ty Newhouse. He played over 400 snaps. He'll have to fill the roles lost by Naki Johnson, Tim Hardiman, Joe Hajeli. But Newhouse is 320. He's played a lot the last 2 seasons. He's a run defender first, only 4 pressures, but 39 tackles is elite for a nose tackle. And then you have a lot of transfers. Arius Nash comes from Virginia Tech. He's originally from Mercer, a bit smaller, and we saw that play out in the Power 4, but with Mercer, he was 100th percentile. Is this the right blend between the Power 4 and FCS where he can really function as a solid contributor but not be in over his head? Louisiana Tech transfer Jaden Madkins is here. Played nearly 500 snaps, another pure run defender, but 275 pounds leaves a little bit to be desired. Then you get Jalen George from Nebraska. He originally played with ETSU, so a lot of continuity with the staff. Unfortunately, he couldn't get on the field with Nebraska, but he was 86th percentile in the FCS. Tulsa's D-line ranks 2nd in this conference. It's a quality unit through and through. Linebacker also should be pretty good. William Alexander is back. They do lose Ray Coney to Texas A&M. Tough loss there. But Alexander played over 500 snaps, 4th on the team in tackles. Only real concern was coverage with the 83% completion percentage, but solid player. And then UAB's Devin Hightower, the former Rhode Island transfer, was awesome last year. He actually didn't see any sort of drop-off coming up from the FCS to UAB. He led the team with 81 tackles, 6'1", 230, profiles to be a pure starter here. Behind them, there's no experience like Aquavius Dunbar has 1 snap, but just having the 2 starters, Tulsa's linebackers rank 4th in this conference. It's a good unit up top, a little thin beyond that. Secondary, this unit was awesome last year, and they're returning everyone except Lento Smith. So this should be the best secondary in the conference. If not number 1, it's number 2. There are a couple teams that have pretty good defenses, Memphis being one of them. But regardless, we're looking at a top 2 unit. And it starts with Elijah Green. 59 tackles for a corner is bananas. He had 5 interceptions and 8 PBUs. You'll take that any day. And I think they might start a transfer opposite him in Caldwell Williford. That's how deep the secondary is. He originally was with Murray State and Tennessee Tech, but Williford played 339 snaps last year, and he was pretty good on them. Then you get competition from like a J.D. Drew, a Nunu Campbell. Both of them played a lot. J.D. Drew, between his time with Utah State and then Tulsa last year, is over 1,900 snaps. That's a lot of experience. Nunu Campbell played 974 snaps in his career. There's a lot of experience at corner. That doesn't even include Devin Robinson, the primary nickel for this team, who's 6 feet 210, 51 tackles and 7 tackles for losses. Incredible for a nickel defender. And he only allowed 20 catches. That was a 59% completion percentage. Your safeties, Zach Williams played 289 elite snaps. He was 3rd on the team in tackles. Riley Leathers comes in from Idaho State, an 81st percentile FCS athlete. Your depth pieces are good, like Tyson Williams from Abilene Christian was 74th percentile. There's a ton of depth in the secondary. It currently comes in 2nd for us just by a hair, but I could very well see this being the number 1 secondary in the conference. It wouldn't surprise me, or probably not anyone else either. Let's take a look at the overall position ranks for Tulsa. We have Tulsa power ranked 78th in this conference. They are very clearly going to be a defensive team again this year. Just they returned a ton of talent, and they were a very talented defense last year. Most of that comes in their secondary. Where they backfilled in the front 7, think they did a good job. Running back is also a strength, but I'm a little worried about the offense getting stuck in the mud because of a questionable O-line. And then what kind of growth do we get out of Baylor Hayes? We still have this projected pretty clearly towards the over. The listed line is 5.5 minus 125 the over, and we're at 6.48. Here's the schedule. You play Oklahoma State again, who you beat last year. Now, they come to your building, funny enough, but tough game. No way around that. Sam Houston's one of the worst teams in Conference USA, and then East Texas A&M is a bad FCS team. You do play Arkansas to round out that, but you're looking at a likely 2-2 start in the non-con, and then you go into conference play. So with the 5.5, you need to pick up 4 wins, assuming you go 2-2 in non-con. Where do they come from? It's not going to be easy. You play the triple option teams all back-to-back, Navy, Rice, Army, 2 of them are on the road. But you're favored in likely 2 of those games. Maybe you're a dog. Regardless, it's going to be a coin flip or close to it in probably 2 of the 3. Then you get your bye and you close out the regular season with Tulane, FAU, Charlotte, and UTSA. It's still a tough schedule. And with the likely 2 losses you take in non-con, I'm probably not looking to touch Tulsa on a win total this year, but very much interested in them against like an Oklahoma State in week 1 with a brand new coaching staff. We'll likely take them against Sam Houston, a team very down on in week 2. So this is a team we do want to back, just maybe not in the win total market where I think you're looking at a pretty narrow range of outcomes. Let's take a look at the chat. Last year, Tulsa versus Army game, I believe they lost by 1 point. Yes, they did. I think the post-game win expectancy for that was still not so good, though. Let's take a look. I have that actively at my fingertips. I can't remember off the top of my head. All right, Tulsa versus Army. Oh, they had a 99% post-game win expectancy. Even with a 1-point win. Wow, that's crazy. A lot of times when games are that close, you see the post-game win expectancy is closer to, like 50%. This was at 99. I guess they did smash them in yards per play. Tulsa was at 8.1 and Army was at 6.4, which is not terribly surprising given how Army plays offense. But yeah, Tulsa was a little bit frisky last year. Definitely going to be hard to score on in conference. I think so too. This is maybe the best defense in conference. Sneaky Memphis might have something to say about that, though. That Memphis defense is no joke this year. All right, we have a fun team to close it out. They're all fun, but this is a team I think is maybe my pick to win the conference. So we'll get to UTSA here in just a moment. Pull up everything on the back end. All right. Looks good. Mike's not muted today. Thanks for bearing with me. What's going on with UTSA? 2 straight 7-6 seasons? Yes, believe it or not, that is a little bit below the standard set by Jeff Traylor. The question is, can he get back to the program's previous heights? I personally think so. This video will tell you why by looking at the roster, the health of the coaching staff, and the program overall before giving a prediction before the upcoming season. But let's take a look at where UTSA sits in those recruiting rankings and program health before we get started. It's a team right in the middle of the pack of the American. There is a lot of jockeying in this conference year over year. They've actually retained exactly 55% of their last 2 classes. But UTSA, they're a victim of their own success more than anything else. And almost more than any team, this roster is getting pillaged by the Power 4 year after year. They still rank 5th in talent acquisition and retention being as high as it is, considering how many players they're on Power 4 rosters in the future seasons. It's pretty incredible they've had this sustained success. They also play a pretty tough schedule. Last year, some of their losses came to Texas A&M, North Texas, South Florida Army. They played Texas State in the non-con. That was a very tough loss for them as well. And when you look at this, they had post-game win expectancies above 50% against Temple, Texas State, Army. This was a team that had an analytical 9-4 season. And those were the losses they took. I mean, you're losing to incredible teams like A&M, great team in the playoff. Texas State, phenomenal G16. Temple was even a little better last year. North Texas obviously had an incredible season. They were in their conference championship. USF was right there. Army was a pretty good team. They went 7-6. So to come out, even though you lost 6 games, have 3 of those with post-game win expectancies above 50%, your analytical record coming in at 9-4 just kind of speaks to how good Traylor was. He's in year 6 now, and we've seen him never miss a bowl, never be any worse than 7-6. Really, the only question is can they get back to like a 10-win season and win the American? Offensive staff is awesome. They do lose their OC, Justin Burke, but Rick Bowie comes in as their new OC. Previously with Western Kentucky, you're going to probably see a bit more air raid stuff, maybe some faster pace. I wouldn't expect too many changes, but those overall should be a couple of them. Jess Lope is the DC. Last year they were 107th, mostly because of injuries, but it's a 3-4 defense. We kind of know what we're getting with him. I'm pretty optimistic with the health of the program. I think they do a good job overall in getting talent. And then Traylor, I'm surprised he's still here, man. He must have had some P4 opportunities and turned them down, probably just waiting for the right one. But he's a phenomenal G6 coach. Let's start taking a look at the roster. We'll go position by position looking at the depth charts. And you can see how experienced the player is in the middle. But the main thing to look at is that value number, 0 to 100 scale, 100 being the best. Those are your all-conference players. 50 is around average. Owen McCown, one of the most experienced QBs in this conference, is back. He's now entering year 3 as a full-time starter. 67% completion percentage last year. 7.3 yards per attempt. He had 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. And believe it or not, most of these stats were worse than 2024. For example, he threw the ball a bit more underneath. That A dot was a little bit shorter, but that rose his completion percentage. All in all, it kept his YPA the same, yards per attempt. But his big time throw rate did drop. He was down to 12 over the year, and his turnover-worthy play rate did jump. He was up at 16. For a guy that doesn't run, he needs to keep that in check because he has been good at taking sacks. And I mean that positively. He doesn't take a lot of them. Only a 15.5% pressure to sack ratio. You don't put the ball in harm's way with your arm. This team is capable of winning a lot of very good games. And we saw them last year even beat a team like Tulane very handedly. So the quarterback room ranks 3rd in this conference. It's behind a couple other of the elite returning signal callers. And part of that is the backups just aren't super talented here. But overall, you'll take McCown over just about any QB in this conference. Wide receiver, losing a little bit here. Devin McEwen went to Ohio State, but David Amador is back. And a lot of these guys have battled injuries year over year. But Amador, 6 feet, 195, caught 46 balls while playing in the slot last year, 63% slot rate. He was actually more efficient in 2024, but Amador is going to be mainly an underneath receiver. His ADOT is 5.4. They like to use him yards after catch. I don't think he's limited to that, though. He actually is 12 of 14 on contested catches in his career. So a guy that they can use wherever they need him. It's positive to have a guy like that in your offense. AJ Wilson is also back. He is 6'2", a former Houston Christian transfer. I think you're probably going to see him play on the boundary for this team. But we saw him after jumping from Houston Christian to UTSA, he maintained his efficiency above 2.0 yards per route. That's incredible. DJ Allen is back, former TCU 4-star. Again, a lot of these receivers battled injuries, so if you're worried about the low snap numbers, don't be as concerned. Hardy was actually pretty good when he was out there. 20 catches, 189 yards, played in and out of the slot. He's 5'11". Jamel Hardy's back at 6'2", 1.1 yards per route for him. You have Missouri transfer James Madison, the second. He's a 4-star coming down looking for more playing time. Texas Tech transfer TJ West is coming looking for more playing time. You have the opposite, Kyle Mesman coming up from JUCO. There's a pretty good blend of receiving talent. I think it's honestly the best they've had in a couple years. And Amador, Wilson, Allen being up at the top, and Madison, an incoming 4-star from Missouri, TJ West, a pretty high 3-star from Texas Tech, should give you a lot of faith in the receiving room for this pseudo air raid offense. Tight end is a lot worse. So last year, just an abundance of riches. Patrick Overmeyer, Houston Thomas, Dan Dishman. So Dishman graduates, but Houston Thomas is at Texas A&M now, and Patrick Overmeyer is at Houston. It's tough. You do bring in Miles Campbell from Florida A&M, who was a 77th percentile athlete in the FCS, and he's a former Tennessee 4-star. So there is some optimism, at least by some recruiting profiles, had him as a 4-star. I think his overall consensus was a 3, which is why we have him as a 3 on the screen. But regardless, he hasn't really played a ton in his career. The main concern you should have, he's old. So you saw 2 years at Tennessee, 2 years at NC Central, didn't really play in any of them, and then goes to Florida A&M and then finally plays. So he's like a 24-year-old who took a long time to get on the field, but still probably the best option they have. Ty Roop has been getting a lot of hype, but he's a redshirt freshman with 12 snaps. Who knows if that is something we should buy into? Isaiah Butler Tanner's played a little bit more. You have like a North Texas transfer in Brandon Young, who is pretty bad. They rank 5th in the conference, which was a bit surprising to me. I thought they would come in much lower than this, considering their losses. But there's a couple of guys you should be at least interested in, even if they don't live up to the 2025 standard that we saw last year. O-line. So can we just get a UTSA injury-free O-line season? Like, please. I can't even remember the last time they had a season where they weren't decimated on the offensive line. Last year, they were 106th in pass blocking, 108th in run blocking. Lost multiple starters again. So let's kind of piece this together. Left tackle, I think you're looking at former 4-star Jonah Miller. He's 6'8", maybe a little thin, but we saw him flash in a number of games already. He played against ECU and FIU and looked pretty good. So even though the snaps aren't there for him, I think you could be somewhat optimistic. Somewhat. Right tackle, DeAndre Marshall probably wins this job. He's 6'7", 325. We saw him play a lot, and he's now in year 5. 16 pressures allowed. It was below average, but run blocking was good. I think those are likely going to be your tackles. And you can be confident in the size. Hopefully they just put it all together. There are a few low-level transfers that probably piece this together in the 2 deep. Not super worried there. I do think tackle is their strength. Right guard Daryl Jones played 614 snaps last year. Good pass blocker, bad run blocker. He's formerly a Bowie State transfer. A little bit low level, but he's 340 pounds. Ben Rios at center, over 1,400 snaps in his career. Elite pass blocker, 17 pressures over the last 2 years, but his run blocking was pretty bad. So you have the same pattern with both these guys. Good pass blockers, poor run blockers. Jalen Garth, probably your last starter. Started 4 games at right tackle last year. He was real bad, but he is a former Texas transfer. Hopefully kicking inside can be a positive thing for him in the long run. And if not, Luke Lepezzi's back as well. He's played a lot in his career. He played 815 snaps in 2023. And he's been a decent pass blocker as well. So there is some options. The offensive line ranks 8th for us. I think it's going to be better than this. Obviously, this is an analytical approach we take. And with some of the uncertainty at tackle, I can see how you get to 8th. But I think you're looking at upside at guard. If you want to put it this way, I think the projection we have on the screen is more of the floor than the ceiling. There's a lot of untapped potential for this unit, especially if they elect to pass a little bit more. But let's look at running back. Last year, they had a stud in Robert Henry, who was a UDFA, so I get why they ran the ball a lot and ran it with him. But Will Henderson was quietly very good as well. He's a bit smaller at 185, but 6.9 yards per carry, 862 yards, also caught 19 passes, did not fumble once, 3.5 yards per carry after contact. Awesome guy. Now, Brandon Hyde comes back. He was previously with UTSA and had a decent 2024 season before electing to try his hand at Cal. Did not go well, so he's back. He'll probably factor into this backfield to some degree. There's also former USC 4-star Marion Peterson. Candles flickering for me on him. I had it lit all last year. He has good size. He has the recruiting profile, just hasn't ever been able to get on the field. And 3.6 yards per carry, yeesh. There is also Bryson Donald from Texas Tech. There's former 4-star Frankie Arthur. Hasn't played yet. It's the top RB room in the conference, and it is very deep. So I think this is one of the better offenses we'll see in the American this year, just flat out, given how strong they are at most positions. If there is a hiccup, offensive line is something to watch. Defense. UTSA was 86th in run D, 74th in pass rush last year. They lose Vic Shaw to New Mexico State and Kenny Ozawalu to Oklahoma. But just before we get into this, they run a 3-4, so some of their position designations are a little funky, and that's kind of what you see with 3-4 defenses. They'll list linebackers as edges, and they're playing special positions where they don't always rush, but sometimes they do. And then occasionally you'll get like D tackles kicking out to 5 techniques, and they get labeled as defensive ends. So just know that. In general, the UTSA defensive line is huge. They have a lot of very big players to fit their scheme. And that starts with Eastern Kentucky transfer Jeremiah Bailey, who was 83rd percentile in the FCS, had 32 pressures down there, very good in run defense, but he kind of fits that mold of like a 5 tech who kicks out, can kick in, can play everywhere. Same thing with Cons and Champong, who comes over from Bowling Green. 4-star, has never really gotten on the field. Maybe this is his level of competition. I think you probably see him at least in rotation with like a Dylan Spencer from Texas Tech, another 4-star who's clearly coming down seeking playing time. There's Cameron Cooper. There's Dranon Fight from Louisiana. Elijah Baldwin from UTEP. They went out and got a lot of players at these positions. Inside, you're not losing too much, but there is at least a couple players to potentially look at here, like Ty Leonard, Jamian Buxton, Johnny Bowens. They all played over 200 snaps, and most of these guys are going to be run stuffers first. Like Leonard, he actually is probably the best one. I don't want to say that confidently, but he has 665 snaps, so he's been playing in rotation for a while. Above average last year, pretty clearly, but he's not the biggest. Buxton's bigger at 325. Bowens is bigger at 300 pounds. Buxton's played 616 snaps, so he's not real far behind Leonard. Bowens hasn't played a ton, but he's a 4-star coming over from Oregon originally. So there's some blend of production talents that I think you can bank on with UTSA. And then you get Eddie Smith from Texas Tech coming to seize more playing time. The defensive line is pretty good. We have it ranked second in the conference, and some of that is based on the edge group, but there's just pretty good depth across the board. They've addressed this well in the portal and just through keeping their roster together at D tackle specifically. Linebacker, you lose Shad Banks and Kendrick Blackshire to the NFL. Both were UDFAs. But Owen Peewee is back, who played nearly 400 snaps last year. That's kind of been his role the last 3 seasons. He has over 1,000 snaps in his career, and he's been good in run defense with 31 tackles, but he's been up and down in coverage depending on the year. Last year, not so good. 93% completion percentage is very high. 143 yards, 1 touchdown, no ball production. But at least we've seen him play well in the past. He should be locked into one of the jobs. There is also Brandon Tucker, who played 302 snaps. He's a bit smaller at 5'11", 225, but good run defender. He had 39 tackles. That's more than Peewee. And 7 catches allowed was solid too. He is a former FCS transfer, came from East Texas A&M, but he was 76th percentile down there. And we already saw the flashes. A lot of optimism for Tucker. James Wally Jr. played 165 snaps. He's more of like your edge linebacker hybrid. Cal transfer Eze Osandu came over to get more playing time. He played 1 snap. Darian White played 65 snaps. The linebacker room is a little fragile, but it does rank 5th overall in the conference. It's a good unit. The secondary unit needs some work after last year. They were 1/10 in coverage. They're losing Jimmy Wyrick to SMU, Tyan Milton to Graduation, Davin Martin to Texas Tech, and KK Meyer to Cincinnati. It looks like twins Assad Chapman and Ahmad Chapman both will get a look to play. Assad, I think, is the better option. He was the number 7 player coming out of JUCO this year, and we already saw his twin Ahmad play 240 below average snaps, with a couple starts. So I think you see at least one of the Chapman brothers. I would put my money on Assad winning it. Just his recruiting profile is a bit better than Ahmad's, but they both could play. Now, they're both volatile, one because he has no experience, the other one because his experience is bad. I think you probably start Jacavian Rogers over one of them at least. He played 300 snaps last year, and he was good in run defense. The coverage was up and down, 63% completion, but 3 touchdowns, 3 PBUs. That's not bad. Nickel's probably Marcellus Wilkerson, who was pretty good on 268 snaps. He made 31 tackles, very good rate statistic for him. Not so great in coverage, but there is a couple other players to maybe look at. Bryce Grays played 173 snaps, primarily a nickel. Zach Morris was a perimeter corner where he struggled a bit. The DB room, especially corner specifically, it definitely has its concerns, especially if you see both Chapman brothers. Safety's a little better. Joel Rogers comes over from LSU. He's a 4-star seeking more playing time. Nate Robinson is a Marist transfer, and he was pretty good down in the FCS. 95th percentile on 799 snaps last year. 6 feet, 200 pounds. You'll take that. Depth comes from JUCO transfer Archie Chambers. Cam Upshaw played 101 snaps. The secondary ranks 9th in the conference because of some concerns, but overall, not really a secondary I'm worried about. I hope they can actually stay healthy. Otherwise, the injuries of what bit them, and that would bite them again this year if it plays out that way. Kicker Michael Petro is back. Perfect on extra points, good accuracy, but not much range. He's never attempted a 50-yard field goal, so kind of is what it is. Here's where UTSA ranks positionally and overall in the conference. We have them power ranked 70th. One of the best numbers in the American. It's my two teams here are them and Memphis and maybe a dark horse Army. I am not on Navy. Their win total is 7.5 minus 130 to the over. That's right in line with our projections, but we don't have any relative weaknesses for this team. Everything is close to average or above average. Biggest concerns are O-line and DB room, but I'm more than happy with the way this team sets up coming into the season. They're very talented for the conference. Unfortunately, their schedule is definitely not easy. They do this every year. They play some hard non-con Texas schools. This year, fortunately, you balance out the Texas game with UT Rio Grande. They should smash them. Texas State on the road is certainly not easy. I know Texas State's now in the Pac-12 this season, but that roster is still very good. They have a returning quarterback. And then you have Colorado State, who you should win. So looking at probably a 1-3 or 2-2 start, depending on how you shake it out. If you go 3-1, you're printing, assuming you would beat Texas State in that situation. But then you get into conference play. I don't think this is the worst schedule, but it's not the best either. Your cupcake-ish games are Rice and UAB. You have fairly winnable games versus a lot of teams in this conference, but South Florida, Navy, Tulane, Florida Atlantic, North Texas, and Tulsa, none of them are easy. So UTSA is going to probably be a team we maybe sprinkle like a conference future on, given their price. But this is a team I'm probably staying away from on the win total, and we'll look to back them week to week like we are with most teams in the American this year. Looking at the chat. All right. Beep, beep. Love that. Owen McCown will be going off this year. Love Owen McCown. They had a crazy home game win streak broken by Army. They're solid at home. Yeah, they're very good at home. A lot of the American teams are, unless you're talking about like Rice or something. But the good teams in the American generally have pretty good home fields. You know, the Armed Service Academy is very good. Finally catching one of these live, and it's my alma mater. Nice. I'm guessing UTSA, the team we were talking about. If so, meet, go Roadrunners. But that'll do it for us today. Looks like finally Big Matt is on my timeline. What's up, man? Who do you guys want to hear about next? Let me know what to do on Tuesday next week. The only team I can guarantee we're going to talk about is South Florida to finish out the American. But after that, we need to go somewhere else. I was thinking about maybe going to the Sun Belt or the MAC. There are a couple big schools we haven't done in the SEC and Big Ten especially, ACC as well. So if you want to hear about a team, let me know. I haven't decided the Tuesday programming yet. More MAC action. We've done a couple MAC teams. I did Western Michigan. I did take a Buffalo future, so maybe we should talk about Buffalo, as gross as that is. Yeah, we haven't done a lot of the MAC. We did UMass. I bet an over on UMass, and we did Western Michigan, but we also did Central Michigan. All right, yeah, we need to dive back into the MAC. There is some money to be made in this conference, specifically with your Buffalo unders, if those of you looking for a sneak peek. But thanks for the suggestion. Wisconsin Whitewater. Man, would love to. Historic D3 program right there. Breakdown over under in a team not on your radar in the top 25. Missouri State. I actually do need to do Missouri State. I have one of their numbers flagged in my model on the back end. Oh yeah, I did do Toledo. I don't know if I did Miami, Ohio. I can't remember. But okay, so we'll do South Florida because we have to finish it out. I'll do Missouri State because they're on my list, like right at the top of it. I need to do them. And then we'll find someone in the MAC. Probably two teams in the MAC to finish this up. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good weekend. We'll see you again on Tuesday. Until then, good luck. We'll see you again next time.